E3 was interesting this year. Not quite as interesting as last year, or the year before that, but what does that really mean, other than apparently we're spoiled rotten? Seriously though, I thought there were some great titles announced this year, most of which were rather unexpected. So here's my rundown of the game announcements that grabbed my attention, in no particular order. Wolfenstein II: The New Colossus. Can we just stop for a moment to appreciate the darkly comical twist on Lassie? All of the traditionally American properties, actually, as seen through the Nazi propaganda machine, were splendidly done, and one of the things that made the first game so eerie. The new Colossus was a real surprise, although so was Wolfenstein: The New Order. It looks kooky, cinematic, violent, unpredictable, and in all the right ways, just like The New Order. Many folks have been citing the acid trip as the highlight of this trailer, and I don't blame them. It's a moment that sticks out. But what sold me on the game was the return of Frau Engel. When I saw that she was back, I was sold. She and her toy boy were the most horrifying aspects of the New Order, and I'm terrified to see what she has in store for Blazkowicz this time around. Life is Strange Before the Storm. The moment I recognised Chloe's room, I was honestly taken aback by how powerful that realisation was. I felt strangely affected. Like many others, I adored Life is Strange, but it took this trailer to remind me of how much I missed Arcadia Bay, and what the game actually meant to me. And this is a prequel by Deck 9, not the sequel recently announced by Don't Nod. I'll admit, I got choked up when I saw Rachel for the first time. Because even though Life is Strange dealt with inevitability in its own way, the trailer for Before the Storm is heavy with it. We already know how it all ends, so now all we can do is look back and explore the part of the journey we didn't get to see as time continues to travel toward those ends. The Last Night. I don't usually express interest in something just because it looks pretty, but for The Last Night, I'll make an exception. This game grabs your attention immediately, and for good reason. Because it's that aesthetic, the, let's be honest here, disgustingly spectacular art style and animation, which lends itself to an ambience only really seen in film, like Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, Luc Besson's Fifth Element or Dark City, all of which are classed as big screen royalty. Its blending of 2D and 3D animation is not necessarily new, but done in such a unique way, it results in kind of groundbreaking visual flow and movement. The Last Night was the best looking game of E3 2017 in my opinion, and I can't wait to play it. Moss. What can I say about Moss other than I love it and I want in? It's Redwall, it's The Secret of Nim, it's a little Miyazaki-like. All experiences from my childhood I would love to relive again in adulthood. You literally jump into a storybook in an old library to play the game. Moss reeks of nostalgia, and the magic and wonder, not to mention danger, that comes along with it. The music was warm and inviting too. Playing as a tiny creature in a huge, lush world is something I haven't experienced before either, so I'm excited to see what that's like. This was my favourite VR trailer, though there were quite a few this year. A lot more than I was expecting, actually, which is good to see. One of my main complaints about the VR was its distinct lack of games to play on it. The Evil Within 2. I didn't like The Evil Within. I know, I love horror games, so what's wrong with me? But this trailer was so interesting, after watching it, I went back and played the first game again, only this time I spent the full 16 plus hours finishing it. I repeat, I wanted to know what happened in the original because the trailer for The Evil Within 2 really piqued my interests. Of course, you can't tell too much from a cinematic trailer, but it seems to me that the sequel will be a much more cerebral experience, which is more interesting to me personally. It looks as though it might use STEM as a narrative device to get inside Sebastian's head, to focus on him and his family, a story thread that went nowhere in the original, rather than the lofty melodrama of Ruvik's psychopathy and evil science. I'm not sure about some of the things that were said in the trailer commentary about the changes that have been made, but I'm definitely ready to set my doubts aside to give The Evil Within 2 a try. Side note, the cover of Duran Duran's Ordinary World has been stuck in my head for the past few days, and served as a nice contrast to the twisted visuals, so whomever was responsible for that creative decision, bravo. Inpatient. If you've read my blog or my post about Layers of Fear, you'll know that I cited schizophrenia simulators as a source that has either directly or indirectly affected the horror genre in video games. This urge to simulate terror as it's seen, heard, or felt by those with actual disorders have gained in popularity. Layers of Fear, the upcoming Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, and now Inpatient. Only this game truly will be a simulation, as it's for the VR. The trailer for Inpatient gave very little away, so I really have no idea what it's about at its heart, though I do hear it's an Until Dawn prequel. Regardless, I'm interested to see what it does with this kind of subject matter. Will it divulge into a gimmick, or will it tread new terrain? I know I'm definitely curious. I guess we'll see in time. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I wasn't hugely excited for Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. The PSX reveal last year really gave nothing away, and the cinematic cutscene that was released in April, I think, was the kind of quiet moment that carries little impact in isolation. The E3 2017 trailer, on the other hand, had everything in it a fan of the series and its characters could ask for. It had humour, action, adventure, intrigue, and betrayal. This is Chloe we're talking about. A buddy movie element, and best of all, it showed off these two characters, now leads rather than villains or supporting characters, in their best light. Never before have I been so eager to see two characters, from two separate games in a series, I might add, team up in their own adventure. Now if only Cutter were to return. A Way Out. A Way Out is the kind of co-op game I've been waiting for. Thank you, Hazelight. Hopefully it will revive this dying genre for those of us who don't play online multiplayer games very often, but do want to play with friends. I also love the way the game was presented to us. They didn't just reveal a trailer, but an example of play narrated by the developer who explained how the game works, what it is about. I'd certainly like to see more of that at E3. Brother, A Tale of Two Sons was a great example of to-me-to-you cooperative play with an AI character. So I'm expecting something equally solid from on-the-couch cooperative play in A Way Out. Elements that really impressed me were the radically different approaches to the same scenarios, depending on which character you play, and how each player views one half of the same story. I wonder how this will affect player experience or connections. I imagine different approaches and attitudes may result in slightly different shades or tones of an outcome rather than radically transforming a resulting event. And in that sense, how a player relates could be affected, which could be really unique. It explores the nature of interactivity and interactive storytelling, and I like that a lot. Hidden Agenda. Hidden Agenda was revealed during the Sony pre-show, alongside some other really interesting games and announcements, which I think is a shame, but that's a conversation for another day. One of the things that made this genre of games, like Until Dawn and even Heavy Rain, so fun and different to play, was the surprising emergence of a social element. One person could play a section through, then hand the controller over for someone else to complete the next chapter or to control a different character. Players would assume roles or different playstyles. Choices then were a lot more unpredictable when played in a group. Hidden Agenda, the newest crime thriller from Supermassive, does just that, using a feature called Playlink for the PS4. The game appears to combine elements of a card or board game with an interactive, mystery, narrative butterfly effect video game. Is there an official term for this genre yet? All of this can be played on your phone and PS4 console. The big question is, will the merging of mediums feel comfortable to interact with, or not? If not, you can play the game alone, and in that regard, I'm always on board to play another interactive, choice-determined, branching storyline video game. Seriously, there needs to be an established term for this genre. The Shadow of the Colossus remake. I really have nothing to say about the Shadow of the Colossus remake, other than, where did that come from? Please don't change the music, and count me in. I would definitely pay money for a trio collection of The Last Guardian and the Shadow of the Colossus and Eco remakes. Beyond Good and Evil 2. I know I said that this video would be in no particular order, but in the case of Beyond Good and Evil 2, I'm making one huge exception. Best for last. This reveal won E3 for me, and the one year I wasn't expecting it. This reveal was such a shock, I was in tears by the time Michel Ancel walked on stage. I know I've been going on about this on social media, but I cannot stress enough how much I love Beyond Good and Evil. I've been playing the game consistently since I was 13 years old. I've finished it an untold number of times. Call it obsession, call it whatever you want. This game is a huge part of my life. Obviously, the cinematic trailer for Beyond Good and Evil 2 looks beautiful. It's a far cry from the peaceful mining planet of Hylis, but also completely in keeping with the melting pot society we saw in the first game. Nox, and I think it's pronounced Shiny, hit me immediately as characters I wanted to spend time with and learn more about. When it wrapped up with the theme from the original game, as a ship crawling with pirates vanished into the sky, I fell in love all over again. And how about those green eyes? Jade's mother, perhaps? Paige did say that Jade wound up in his care because they'd all been separated after a run-in with the authorities. Supposedly, this game will give some context to the original story, which is perfect. I recently found out too that Christophe Herral is thankfully returning to score the prequel. I say thankfully because that man's work on the original is criminally underrated and so wide-ranging. From Mamagos, to Propaganda, to the Spanish bar theme, to this day I still haven't heard a soundtrack so full of influences, cultures and styles, and still manages to be so listenable. And if you want to know what I think of the swearing, check out this scene from Stephen King's Misery. I'll give you a hint. Paul Sheldon is Michel Ancel.
The swearing, Paul. There, I said it.
The profanity bothers you.
It has no nobility.
These are slum kids. I was a slum kid. Everybody talks like that.
They do not?
I have no problem with it. In my opinion, profanity does not a good or bad game make. I'm currently drafting up a more detailed summary on the prequel. It will either be a blog post or a video, but expect either one of these at some point. Honourable mentions go to Spider-Man, one big point for the inclusion of Miles Morales, Anthem, the Mass Effect I wanted, and Starchild, which just looks like a good time. So that was it. The 11 trailers from E3 2017 that grabbed my attention. Feel free to share your favourites and why in the comment section below. I look forward to reading them. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in my next video, which will definitely be about something.